Hello, beautiful souls. It's Reverend Chris talking to you today from my office. It is Wednesday, and I usually do my videos on Friday or Saturday, but this week I decided to do it a little early. I do have a lot going on this weekend. I got back just a little bit ago from my American Business Women's Association meeting. I'm in the Novi Oaks chapter, and I'm so blessed to have these positive women around me. The networking, listening to wonderful speakers, having encouragement from other women. It's wonderful. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to them. If you remember last week, I did not have a video. That's because I was actually out of the country for about 8 days. I went to New York City, London, and Paris, and back to New York City before returning home to Detroit. And it was a very interesting experience. I have traveled overseas before, but I've never traveled overseas with my daughter or my husband before, and it was different. A lot of interesting situations came up, and I started realizing a pattern, and I wanted to talk about that in my video today. I'm naming this video A Verse for Every Situation, and I decided to name it that because I feel like at this point in my life, in my personal life, in my ministry, in my work life, so many situations come up, and there's always an answer in the Bible for everything that happens, whether it's a good situation, a learning opportunity, a bad situation, a person you meet that's not so positive. Verses just came to mind during the whole trip, and I decided that I would make that the topic today because I just think it's really important to relate the Bible to everyday life, and that is one of the great things about our Bible is that we are able to do that. Today I'm using my NIV, my miniature Bible. I bought this in 2003, right after I had my daughter Valerie, and I was actually baptized once again in 2004 in the Free Methodist Church in Monroe, Michigan. And they were using the NIV a lot, so that's one reason I decided to buy one. I bought it used on Amazon, and I'm thankful that I did that. So I still use it as a reference, and it's great because I can carry it in my purse. I actually do that a lot. I usually probably, if you ever run into me, I'll probably have this actual Bible in my purse when you talk to me. So, okay, well, so my goal is to show you today examples in the Bible of how verses or advice for everyday life come up. You can find almost any, probably, I'm not going to say almost, I'm going to say you can find any answer or advice on any situation in the Bible, because the Bible is all-knowing and it's timeless. I feel like the Bible is blessed by God. It's divine. It speaks to you. It speaks to your soul. When you're looking for something, if you seek it, you shall find it. That is in the Bible, that verse. But it's true. Once you seek, and you will find. So the first situation I'm going to talk about that happened on the trip was, it was probably our second day in New York City, and I met this cab driver. His name was Mukhtar. He was from Pakistan. We were having just a nice conversation, and he asked me about my flight. How was your flight? You know, making pleasant conversation. Well, guess what I realized? I had booked Spirit Flight 316, and if that doesn't mean anything to you, that's okay. But I just think it's funny. Spirit Airlines, I'm always talking about how the Spirit of God is inside of you and is all around us. And 316 is a famous verse. It's called, people who are Christians for a long time, they just call that verse the good news. And that is, that verse is God gave his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. So basically, it's the verse that sums it all up of what being a Christian is, that God sent his only Son to save us. So when people talk about spreading the good news, it's like saying John 3:16, God sent his only Son to save us from ourselves, and then you go on and you explain that whole thing. So it was really interesting that I happened to book Spirit Flight 316 to get to from Detroit to New York City. So I told him, I said, oh my gosh, I realized that. And then we were still talking, and I realized, you know, these moments are always predestined. They're supposed to happen. When you talk about Christ or the Bible with anyone, those are always supposed to happen for a reason. There's always a plan, and he mentioned it too. And then I said, we talked about what verse was it that if two or more gather in his name, then you're having church. You don't necessarily have to go to a church or a place to have church. And so we ended up talking about that. There was two different verses, but the one that came to mind was Matthew 18:20. So let me read that for you. And it says, 18:20, "For where two or three come together in my name, I am with them." So that's one of the main ones. They say it a few times in the Bible, but that's the main one that we ended up deciding was the best, the best verse for what was going on at the time. That we were like spontaneously together, talking about Jesus, talking about Christ. That's having church. My husband was there, my daughter was there. We were all in the cab together, and it was really special. So, okay, moving along. Oh, wait, let me back up. So, when I think about that verse, and I think about Jesus, I think about how Jesus would just like drop everything and like give a quick lesson. And he would just like have church anywhere and just teach to anybody. And I think that's one of the things that I feel that I need to do in my life. And I'm hoping that people who watch this video either do already or start to do. I hope I can inspire someone to do that. So, for example, Jesus is passing along in a city and they're about to stone a woman. They're telling her, you've sinned, we're going to stone you. And he's like, whoa, 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 let me teach you about this. Who here hasn't sinned? Who here is better than this woman? And he just like dropped everything on his trip to go where he was going and made it a teachable moment, made it church right there. So that's what we can do at any time. We can make any situation church. It could be a basketball game. It could be, you're hanging with 5 friends talking about going to see a movie. I mean, you can have church anytime. So isn't that great? All right, so moving along on our trip. Leaving New York City to go to London, we got another cab driver, and this was a completely different experience than the first. He was angry, he was screaming at me, he was mad I didn't know what gate I needed to be at. I told him I didn't have the ticket yet, I only had the confirmation. He had no patience, he was driving erratically. I could have went off on him, I could have been mean to him back, but I kept thinking about what God says about like letting things go and what the Bible says about, like turn the other cheek and, just like let it pass by and, it's him looking like a fool. It's not me. And I was reminded of Ephesians 4:31, and let me read that to you. It says, "Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice." So basically let it go, let him go off and just ignore it. Don't let it ruin your day, kind of like, all those hard feelings inside of you that could happen. Be in control and be disciplined enough to realize that it's him with the problem and don't react to it. And I love that because Jesus never reacted. He had so many haters. He had so many people saying that he was crazy, he wasn't the Son of God, and he was just like, whatever. And I want to be like that. Martin Luther King tells a story of how he was awoken and he opened his eyes and the devil was sitting at the end of his bed. And he said, "Oh, it's just you," and turned over and went back to sleep because he wasn't going to be bothered. And that's what we need to do. All right, sorry I got off track there. Okay, so the last verses I'm going to talk about are more uplifting, I hope. One of the dreams that came true on this trip was my daughter. She really has asked me, believe it or not, since she was 3 years old, she wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. This was her dream. This was her thing she really wanted to do in her life. This was very important for her to do. So we did, and she did achieve her dream. And it was just a really big dream of my husband to kind of see more of the world. He'd never been outside of, like, the US and Canada. And it was just a dream come true of all the planning of the trip for over a year, saving for the trip, booking the dates, the correct flights, the hotels, getting everything in order. It was like a long process. It was like setting a lot of small goals and working towards it. So I have 2 verses on that of dreams coming true, achieving goals. And the first one is Psalm 37:4. And it says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your hearts. So I know a lot of people might not relate that to goals, but I do. I feel like God puts desires in our hearts, or he knows the desires we're wanting, and if we serve him, he will help us get our desires. And I feel that it is really related. So I feel like because we worked hard, we saved, we prayed, we really wanted this goal, God knew that, and he helped them come true, and he delighted in our desires and our hearts, and we delighted in God. So that's one reason we were able to do it, was because God helped it happen and blessed us with everything that we did. And then lastly, Philippians 3:14. I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Jesus Christ. So he's saying if you keep pressing on, you're going to get your end goal. And in this case, he's talking about getting to see Jesus and going to heaven, and getting the end goal in life. It's you have to keep pressing on and doing the right thing, believing, being good. So I was reminded of all those verses on my trip, and actually a few more, but I didn't think it was good to put all those in to keep, for time's sake and explaining sake and all that, because there is some things I do like to keep personal to myself, even though I make these videos for the public. I don't like to tell everything in my life that happens at every moment. So I hope someone was touched by one of these verses, or these help you to have some encouragement in your life. I hope you have a wonderful, blessed rest of your week. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, you can always donate on patreon.com, $1 or more anytime. I'll put the link below. You can email me at freeprayerlove@aol.com if you would like free prayer. It's anonymous, and it's just my email address that I started years ago for prayer. And I love your comments. You can like, share, subscribe my videos, and tell your friends. You can, pass them along, pass them on. And I have a Facebook page, Rev Christie's devotion page, and the Christie's a 1 for the I. So if you find that, I do a daily, at least one post every morning with either Bible verses or positive like quotes, things like that. So thank you so much for watching, and I will have more for you next week.